Thank you for listening to this worship podcast of St. Andrew Lutheran Church. We hope this recording provides you with a moment of God's grace wherever this finds you. Know that you're welcome to join us in person for worship in Eden Prairie on Sunday mornings at 9 or 10:30. And also know that any contribution you make will bolster St. Andrew's ministry and outreach, including our podcasting directly to you. You can do so online. Welcome and God's blessings to you.
My name is Emma, and I'm in 4th grade.
My name is Maya, and I'm in 2nd grade.
The reading is from the New Testament, Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5, verses 38 to 48. You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist an evildoer, but if anyone strikes you on the right cheek, turn the other also.
And if anyone wants to sue you and take your coat, give your cloak as well. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go also the 2nd mile.
Give to everyone who begs from you, and do not refuse anyone who wants to borrow from you.
You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy.
But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be children of your Father in heaven. For he makes his sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the righteous and on the unrighteous.
For if you love those who love you, what reward do you have? Do not even the tax collectors do the same?
And if you greet only your brother and sisters, what more are you doing than others? Do not even the Gentiles do the same? Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect.
The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Thank you for reading. Wonderful to have all of you here as we gather at St. Andrew as we continue our Following the Way series from the Gospel of Matthew and the Sermon on the Mount. As I said last week, too, don't wait necessarily until we get to these services during the season of Lent when we'll be reading Matthew 5, 6, and 7 together. It's 3 chapters long in the Gospel of Matthew, quite easy for us to absorb it on our own, at home, in our own life of reading and reflecting, as we then, of course, on Sunday mornings will take opportunities here and there to delve into the important themes therein that Jesus has for us to consider as people of faith. And so we look today at the passage here of loving all of our neighbors, loving everyone, even loving our enemies and those who persecute us. I was thinking a bit about how I seem to be getting a little bit more like my dad. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a moment. Because I got used to, before he passed away, right before I came to St. Andrew, he was a daily phone call. He and my mom both were daily phone calls as I made my way about my life every morning. It's been almost 20 years since I lived in the same time zone with any of my immediate family. And so you really do need to create those moments and opportunities to have these phone calls. And of course, that has continued on and on through my time here at St. Andrew and in other ways. It seems like whenever I get into the car, I always call my mom. It's just what I do. Well, over the past fall and the summertime, one of the constant themes that was part of our conversations, and sometimes my sister Anna would join in the conversations, was waiting for the episodes of Succession to drop. Didn't you watch the episodes in the series Succession at all? Well, I wasn't watching it at the time, but Anna and Mom, we would get on. Anna's working. She would chime in every once in a while on the phone, but they would talk about Succession or when it's on, and it piqued my interest. What is the show that they're talking so much about? And so Michelle and I gave it a shot. We started tuning in to watch Succession. And this is where I'm feeling like I'm a little bit more like my dad, because I started viewing it And as an episode went by and another episode went by, the characters in that show, Succession, don't have very many redeemable qualities. It was a very kind of disturbing story for me. And so I remember telling Anna and Mom at some point, a little bit later, Michelle and I tried, but man, I can hardly stand it. It is just one of those stories. I also tried, incidentally, watching a little bit of Suits, which of course is on Netflix as well. Similar kind of theme in a way, isn't it? Also, another movie from many years ago, it might have been an Academy Award winning movie, Wolf of Wall Street, but another parody, crazy parody, all about enemies. Am I right? Succession, Suits, Wolf of Wall Street seems to illustrate in so many ways that in these dramas, everybody else in the episode, in some way, shape, or form, is out to get you, or that they are enemies. All these movies and these episodes, it's like a dog-eat-dog world. There's a scarcity, fights to get to the top, all these revenge cycles over and over and over again. And it makes me wonder why I didn't really enjoy it very much to dive into these. I needed characters that had a little bit more depth. Part of it's my faith life, being growing up in the family that I did, that I don't always have to sit at the head of the table. That's not a teaching of Jesus. You know, that servanthood and of giving is the way to lead. And that vulnerability is also okay in my life and in my faith. I'm a sinner redeemed by the love of Jesus. I'm not perfect. And so whenever I get caught up in a show kind of like this, it makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable. And so that's why I'm getting back to the story of my dad. My dad, when he found himself watching something or caught up in something that didn't agree with him, he would just leave. He would just go. he would walk out of a movie theater. He would just not want to be a part of that because it was taking him to this place that he didn't want to or need to relate to. There's too much of that in everyday life. Dad was like that, and I guess I'm a little bit more like that. And while I know Anna and Mom love Succession and many others love the other shows, I have not watched the rest of it. That's me, I guess. Because the way of Jesus isn't like any of those shows. The way, the preaching, the Sermon on the Mount, the call, the task of being a Christian person in the world isn't like any of those fanciful stories, even if that's what happens perhaps in the real world more than I would think, and maybe more than I try to avoid, perhaps. But the way of Jesus, following Jesus, is a different thing. We're talking radical generosity. We're talking abundant mercy. We're talking a ridiculous kind of forgiveness of people, a principled life, and a beloved community where all belong and feel welcomed. That's what I grew up in. That's what we all grow up in here by being a part of St. Andrew Lutheran Church, which why these television shows don't really fit in very well, or at least we need to be careful how tightly they fit in. If they're just entertainment, great. But I was thinking a little bit more about what Jesus was up to. Again, if we're following the way of Jesus, if we're making our way forward, think about what Jesus did when he formed up the group of 12 disciples. These 12 people that made their way into his life and ministry. Who were they? They were fishermen that lived in Capernaum or up by the Sea of Galilee. There was a tax collector who named Matthew, who wouldn't have been seen as very, very much a good person. Tax collectors were not admired at all. There was Simon the Zealot, this person who was an ultra-nationalist. That was part of the original 12 that Jesus said, you too follow me. You're part of this group here as well. But an ultra-nationalist, someone who is in favor perhaps even of the violent overthrow of the Roman government and the control of that area. Jesus assembled around him Thomas and Bartholomew. And Bartholomew was also a doubter, just like Thomas was. And then Jesus even had someone who was teetering named Judas Iscariot as a part of this core group of people that he was calling to be a part of this group. It's an amazing collection of people, of friend and even foe, of people who got along and knew each other and those who knew nothing about each other at all, but Jesus was calling them into a central place and a central mission and a central ministry. And Jesus didn't stop there, because Zacchaeus, that other tax collector, was called out of the tree, and Jesus went and had dinner with him. Again, tax collectors were not considered fair, or they skimmed off the top. Jesus is the one who talked about Samaritans that were of another nationality, another religion, that Jews and Samaritans didn't get along very well. But Jesus did with the woman at the well and made an example of the Good Samaritan. Jesus had a way of saying to the centurion, you are a man of faith. Yes, you're a Roman general or a Roman ruler that has soldiers reporting to you. But your faith has made your son well. You are blessed and part of this community. I would even say that as we fast forward to the book of Acts as well, when Saul has been the one who's persecuting the church, he will only become Paul after this dramatic conversion experience when Jesus appeared to him on the road from Jerusalem to Damascus and saw in him that he wasn't an enemy, but that he was to become the greatest missionary of the Christian faith, and ultimately the author of so many of the epistles in the New Testament. What is Jesus doing here? Enemy of the faith. Jesus sees potential, not limitations. Jesus calls together unexpected people that yield surprising results. Jesus calls us to experiment with or live into a unity and a commonality. And it's all over the New Testament ministry here as Jesus sets us on this new way, not the way like the Hollywood way, but a new way of what it means to be community. And so a couple of things I wanted to talk about here this morning. One of those, friends, is we live in a world that's all full of divisions and circumstances that are within our own communities and within the nation and the world about maintaining our curiosity for our neighbors. Jesus continued to do these things, pull together all of these people, build up the ministry of Christ, this hodgepodge group of people. And we too need to be careful not to stop our own sense of curiosity, our own sense of longing to understand and to know the people around us and in our community, so that we don't fall ourselves into our own trenches or our own places without understanding the fullness that God loves everybody. Everybody in this place and everybody beyond. I was reminded again of a book that was written by David Brooks, New York Times columnist. It was released about a year ago or so. How to Know a Person is the title of the book, and the subtitle is The Art of Seeing Others Deeply and Being Deeply Seen. The art of seeing others deeply and being deeply seen. He too is scratching at the surface here of what it means to be community in the world today, and how there's issues with depression, with isolation, with our own echo chambers that happen here, there, and everywhere, and is saying that we need to learn and understand differently about how we see other people authentically and fully. That I want to be seen fully and authentically for who I am, and so do you. One of the tricks that he proposes in his book is called Ask Storytelling Questions. Ask questions that involve a story. When you're getting to know someone for the first time, or maybe someone who you've known for a long time, make sure you're asking storytelling questions. For instance, this past Wednesday with Pastor Kristen here at St. Andrew, here for her first week, we had an all-staff meeting, as we do once a month here for everybody. And I wanted the staff to take the time to go around the room to introduce themselves so that we could get names and responsibilities, but also to hear what it was what their first job was when they started working, their very first job. It was a storytelling question, friends. It wasn't just what's your name and what's your responsibility, but tell us something about yourself. And so I heard that not only I got my start at a Hardee's fast food restaurant in Fargo, but 2 other members of the staff also have Hardee's as their first jobs. A new bond that I never thought that I would have. The other one that brought the greatest joy to us as we were getting to know and seeing our fellow staff members a little bit more deeply was when Maggie Wagner, our Senior Director of Church Operations, and Pastor Jean Amit, our new visitation pastor, spoke Russian to each other. They spoke Russian to each other. I would not have guessed that in a million years, that they could speak Russian, but both of them speak Russian. And so these storytelling questions, friends, are so much more real and alive and authentic to invite someone to be part of what it is. So we don't just simply ask, what do we believe, but how did you come to believe that? Is a storytelling question. How did you come to believe that? Another storytelling question is, what are you proud of? Or where are you from? And then you just pause. And the biggest argument that he makes in this section of the book is this declaration to the reader, and I think for you as Christian people today, is be a loud listener. Be a loud listener. There's a lot of loud talkers today, but practice being a loud listener. It takes relationship. It takes time. It's not tweets or paragraphs, but it's more chapters of an opportunity to make sure that the people who are in our neighborhoods or that are even in our own families are seen, so that you too can also be seen. There's a great story that he also tells in the book about Prime Minister Winston Churchill's mother, who had a chance to meet the Prime Minister of England way back in the 1920s. And she went in to Chamberlain and got to know him a little bit better and came out of the meeting saying that he is the cleverest man in England. And then a couple of weeks later, she had the chance to meet with his rival in England. And they had a meeting together, a lunch. And at the end of that lunch, she said to Winston Churchill, he made me feel like I was the cleverest person in England. Do you see the difference? That he, the prime minister, was the cleverest person in England, fine, but she felt was empowered and was seen so much that she became the cleverest person in England, or so she felt. So listen, my friends. There's so much more in people's lives and people's stories than what you might realize. That's my point. And so we at St. Andrew want to make sure that those stories are authentic and real, that we are together, that we are whole, because we can still do that. Absolutely. Here at St. Andrew, we talk about cultivating beloved community. It's part of our vision statement. And it's what we want to do is cultivate a belovedness, that everybody is welcomed, that everybody has a story, that everyone's faith lives is at a certain stage of life, and that we together are cultivating this one community here together. I think it is a beautiful thing. So this morning, we gather here in the sanctuary with 400 or 500 people, but we're going to divide up a little bit into smaller groups in the narthex. Maybe you'll go back into the fellowship hall and grab a donut and sit with old friends, or maybe make a new friend. But I encourage you, as we practice cultivating beloved community, to ask that question, what is your first job? Tell me a little bit more. What is your earliest memory of church? Because we all will have our church memory, first memory, even if it was last week. What is it that you appreciate most about St. Andrew is another favorite question that I ask. These are storytelling questions and ones that invite you to listen loudly, experience deeper appreciation for one another, and see where a community then, beloved community, where Christian community, where Jesus community is formed up and anchored. Such opportunities. But probably most important, beloved community should be practiced out there. Jesus says, love your neighbors, pray for those who persecute you. Jesus said, if someone asks for a shirt off, your coat off your back, give them your shirt as well. And I think as we interpret this, as we think about leaning away from divisions and into community, into belovedness, into wholeness, into what Jesus is doing, practice generosity, practice graciousness, share to the point of overwhelm, and practice loud listening to the people in our community. I think we could stand a dose of that in our church and in our world. And some learning and understanding and of seeing everybody truly and fully and completely. Back to my dad. When he was in his final stages of his cancer battle about 12 years ago, I have a plaque on my wall that's in my office when he said the words, don't consider what isn't possible, rather consider what is possible. Those are some of his final words to me. Again, don't consider what isn't possible, rather what is possible. With God, with community, with beloved community, with paying careful attention to practicing how we function, how we love our neighbors, how we turn our other cheeks, how we are engaged with people. With God, it's never too late. It's always possibilities, always opportunities to become more and more the beloved community of God. It's never too late, ever. Amen.
Thank you for listening to this worship podcast of St. Andrew Lutheran Church. We hope that this recording provides you with a moment of God's grace wherever this finds you. Any contribution you make to St. Andrew will bolster our ministry and outreach, including our podcasting directly to you. You can do so online. Thank you for joining us for this podcast, and I wish you every blessing from Christ today.